Games. Board games and print on demand, it's what we're talking about. Board games and print on demand, I'm not gonna shout. Today I am here with another person whose name's Robb Butler, and Robb Butler's made some games for other people and for themselves. That's the same because you publish your manufacturing too. And these are the things that Robb Butler will do. Robb Butler, what are about is what we're talking about. Robb Butler, I'm not going to shout. Hello, Robb Butler.
Hi.
So, and to everyone watching, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever it is, wherever you are, it is 10 a.m. UK time and time for Busy Beats and Board Game Bladder. And I'm here with another meeting episode, which I've not had in a while, where we just get to know someone. We get to hear about their other passions, but also how they got into gaming and what you do, and just a general quick overview.
Okay.
And hello, Timmy.
Hi, Tim.
So let's, if I may, start off. Can I talk about some of the things that you've been doing recently? What are some of your recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games?
Are these game highlights, life highlights? Or just sort of
anything? What have you been doing in the past couple of days, in the past week? What have you played?
I've just
that's a big deal.
So I've got it this morning. I've just been furiously looking around the house trying to find a razor because I'm very, very bushy. I can't find it. It's in a box somewhere. That's been the story of the last few days. Is just sort of looking for stuff.
So everything is boxed up. You've got everything over.
Everything's where it's supposed to be. So that's a good.
That was a good feeling. Ordeal.
7 months. We've lived out of suitcases for 7 months. So yeah.
Congratulations on finally making it over. That is awesome.
Thank you.
And hello, Yoda. And have you had a chance to play any games recently?
No. I don't really get a chance to. I'm not really sure how people that are designing and publishing actually get time to actually play anything other than the stuff that they're working on. I'm just like, especially if you've got kids, it's just I don't have enough time in the day to do anywhere near the amount of stuff that I need to get done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my secret is that I've got no dependents and I've got no children. And
I could see how that'd be useful.
Work 7 days a week, and but
I remember that. I think most of my designing was done prior to children. Most of my gaming done prior to children. So I'm just they're still a little bit young, really, to sort of get them into it. I've already started doing just quite basic stuff with them, but I think at the point that I'm able to involve them in slightly more complex stuff, I can use them as my test subjects.
That makes sense. Sounds like maybe when are whatever age range you are happy to have for your games, because even though your games aren't the heaviest, you've got something joyful like flicking airplanes around, but they're still maybe a bit advanced until, like, for a 4-year-old. You're not making what we'd call children's games.
No. But
and so, but if you choose to make children's games, maybe you've got some willing test subjects.
Yeah, I have been mulling it over just to, since having kids, really, I thought it would be a really good way of doing it and getting into that kind of market. But the bits that we do play are super, super basic, just kind of racy games and like matching games and things like that. Nothing particularly complex. But I know the guy that I used to, he now lives in Korea. But he's got a little lad, and he's kind of started him very, very early, and he's got him playing quite heavy stuff at kind of I think he's around about 6 now, but he's got him playing like Z-War that we've done and things. He said he struggles to hold his concentration with games that are running into sort of an hour and a half and whatnot, but he's pushing with it, and I think my eldest will be ready to take things like that on probably within a year or so. So yeah, it should be good.
Yeah, I think that all about you, but it's also all about the child. I mean, they're all different, right? And we've got to kind of accept that, much as I think all parents seem to want their children to be who they really wanted to be, in a sense. And but then you've got to kind of accept at a certain level, hey, wait a minute, this is not a mini me. This is actually a totally separate being. And if they want to go off and do their own thing, then that's got to be okay.
Yeah, you do see a lot of people kind of living their lives vicariously through the children. But yeah, the very children are weird. I've got two children. There's only an 18-month gap between them, but they're absolute polar opposites, and I don't really understand how that works with the whole. They've been both raised exactly the same, and they've both got exactly the same genetics. At least I hope so.
I mean, there is a random subset. So, I mean, given that there's half of your genes and half of your partner's genes, they might have the complete opposite genes. I mean, they could, absolutely, in theory, have exactly the other half.
But they are polar opposites. I think I'll probably struggle with getting my youngest to sit down and concentrate for long enough, because she's just a little bit of a wild child. But yeah.
And hello, Jeroen. It is lovely to see you as always. We're just sharing what our recent highlights are, so if you've got anything that you'd like to chat about, feel free to share. Personally, I managed to finish all the art for a game the black and white line art for a game about quickly grabbing creatures that are totally different and counting your radishes, which is a completely different game.
Completely different games to turning one.
Yeah, and the beetroots one. This is like playing it on super hard mode. So now all the creatures are doing things. Now they've all got props. And I've started doing a good chunk of the colouring in. Chris is going to be scanning it. And honestly, I was feeling really nervous about colouring it in. I couldn't quite make it work until actually the past couple of games that I've put through you, which are a game about quickly counting cats' shapes and colours that keeps getting trickier, and then a game about quickly matching words to pictures, but never words to words or pictures to pictures. Those two, I did a black and white line art, and then I did the colouring on a totally separate sheet of paper to be composited digitally. And doing that,
did it as an overlay,
so the black was on top, and with the white just cut out of it, and that made it less stressful. And honestly, doing that, I know that the black's really going to pop out. It's going to be really visible because that's going to be kind of put on top digitally, if you know what I mean. But then I've got the colors, so I can go a wee bit wild with the colors, and I'm really happy with how it's going.
They were mid cat counting. We're doing cat counting at the moment, aren't we?
Yes, I sent that to you 1 week ago, I think.
I set that up yesterday. It's on the machine this morning, so that should be
exciting.
Yeah, it's just we do lose track.
You mean because there's so many people, or because me specifically?
No, just say you specifically just send so much stuff through.
Yes. For those unaware, I've decided that I'm going to do at least one new game for every convention I attend. And after UK Games Expo, I do have nothing until the end of August, Tabletop Scotland, which is going to be an opportunity for me to maybe focus on other things and actually not maybe take a bit of holiday and unpack myself.
Yeah, there's definitely a sort of con season, isn't there? From the sort of busy period that stuff runs to. I mean, we most of our con stuff finishes it's always absolutely mental in September, generally September with stuff for us, and then right now up to Expo. So at the moment, everybody's I'm getting several messages a day with people, and this is the one that really, really scares me. It's the one when people just say, "When's the latest that I can send you my stuff through if I want to get things in time for Expo?" And then I'm trying to think back through, right, okay, how many other people have I told this date to, so how much stuff's going to all drop on that day, and then have I actually figured it out? So yeah, end up working through the weekends and stuff in the run up to it, but it's always chaos. It's always been like that. So
yeah, I've kind of been working overnight, feeling like, okay, 10 p.m. I'm exhausted, set the alarm for 2 a.m. Get up, and yeah, that was my last night. But
you got up at 2 to do game stuff.
To do this morning to do colouring.
Right.
That's not a normal thing. That was just
Yes.
specifically because I need to get it done for Christus Canon to be sent to you.
Right.
But
You're still quite chipper, all things considered.
thank you. And Jeroen recently bought Yogi on a flea market, which is like nice to hear that it's moving around the Netherlands and it's Liberation Day in Netherlands. So congratulations. I would like to, if we can, talk about a brilliant thing. Do you have a brilliant thing that you would like to share with us, Rob? What do you like in life, whether it's children or having a roof over your head, or, if you could point to
See,
anything and say, this is something that maybe it's overlooked. And I want to give a shout out to this brilliant thing, brilliant thing. It's a little thing which is brilliant.
oh, you see, you said children. So now if I don't say children, I look like a terrible parent.
Good morning, Josie. We are talking about brilliant things, and apparently, children is going to be the brilliant thing of the day. Why are children a brilliant thing?
Oh, do you know? There was a comedy sketch the other day, which was I was watching, and it was a guy talking about the fact that people were talking about that it was a selfless act to have children versus it being a selfish thing to have children, and he was saying that basically it's definitely a selfish thing because you make something that's like a miniature version of yourself, and then you love it more than anything in the world, which is.
Yeah, it's like that thing, the selfish gene, like we're programmed to procreate and we're programmed to pass on something to think about, hey, what happens when we're gone, right?
Yeah, there's a legacy aspect, isn't there, to children? But I think in this particular sketch he was talking about, like, my child does loads of stuff, and all the stuff that my child does is cute, but when it does stuff that reminds me of me, that's when it's cutest. That was like that was the general gist of it. But I found it amusing because it is like whenever my children do something that reminds me of me, generally bad stuff when they're reminding me of me. It's like the way that they argue is. They even repeat things back that I use in conversation when I'm making a point, and I'm just like, oh, yeah. So
even though we've just had a chat about them not being a mini me, you're saying that is when they're at their cutest, when they are fulfilling that stereotype of being a mini Rob.
Yeah, that's when I like them most. It's when I like them most, and also when I like them least. If they're doing something that I do and it's good, I'm like, yeah, that's good. But if they're doing something that's, yeah. It's generally the arguments. If they're arguing with me in the same way that I would argue with the mum, but when presenting a point, and they'll just they also use the same turn of phrase, the copy turn of phrase as well, which is started doing that from a very, very early age. And I always find that quite cute and funny because sometimes it just sounds really weird with like adult phrases coming out of very small children.
Talking about brilliant things, Josie wants to give a shout out to the ability to vote, which is a really nice pointer. Jeroen says that the brilliant thing that we take for granted is that we are not at war and we're able to say what we want. It's hard for us to understand how hard it is to not be able to say or be who you want to be. I mean, that is, definite. I'm not going to say there is always the freedom to be who you want to be without, aggression where you aren't infringing upon anybody's rights. Like, definitely, I've had violent attacks on me just based on how I look or whatever. But for the most part, yes, you're right. We are lucky that it's far better here than it would be in Russia or Ukraine. So I think it's a fair point to remind ourselves how lucky we are.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sorry,
no, carry on.
No, I was just going to carry on, but like, if you had something to say in reply, you go first.
I was going to go into a Russia thing, but I'm not. I've decided against it. Brings it all down, doesn't it?
I think that it's good to be reminded of these things. I'm not going to choose to focus on it right now, if you know what I mean.
No,
I would like to carry on and talk about some questionably quick questions is the next section. It's not an interrogation, it's just the questionably quick question section.
Okay.
So the questionably quick questions. Miniatures or standees or meeples?
Oh, jeez. I really don't care.
That's a fair answer. So
It's very
would you just
it's
go with
secondary, isn't it?
whatever's cheapest? Would you just go? I mean, would it be meeples in that case?
Um, like I've been doing some stuff recently with just like top down tokens. And just because obviously all you when I'm doing tile art for stuff, that's 2D anyway, so it just I don't think it detracts from it. And you also get a little bit of functionality with tokens where you can flip them to show different statuses and that kind of thing.
Mm-mm-mm.
So I do quite like tokens, which is probably other people's least favorite way of doing it. People
They
like a
have to
little
be
bit of
quite chunky, though. Have you
yeah,
played Energy Empire?
I haven't.
Oh, these are really nice. Those are tokens that are like almost 1 centimeter thick. It's almost amazing how thick these things are.
I played around with something the other day that was like I was looking at a decoupage card. So I did some stuff that was um, like it was some spaceships for a game called Starflix that we're doing, and it was basically 3 layers of. So we did like a base layer that was the bottom of the ship, and then so it was kind of 3D looking down onto it, like multi-layer tokens. But I did that with a laser,
Hmm.
and you know, like when people do dual layer player
Yeah,
boards. Like that, but obviously like an inverted dual layer player board to do like a decoupage piece, and I'd not really seen that before.
yeah, there's definitely a lot more that we could do with cardboard and assembling and having even things that slot into one another. I mean, there's definitely a lot that we could do. Um, Jeroen says wants to give a shout out to definitely miniatures or funny meeples. Apparently, Jeroen's against cardboard, which to me feels a little bit sad. Josie says it's nice to put a face on Rob because I best speak about you so often.
Yeah, lots of people were surprised that I had a face on the Facebook group. But yeah,
Yes, who was it? Martin Cubberley, who um, said, "Oh my gosh, Rob isn't in blue and yellow."
yeah,
And with a pointy finger, like a
a nice
cardboard
pointy finger
character.
can do loads of
Um,
things.
we've got a
But
couple of quick questions from Chris Shepperson. Firstly, what is urban BJJ?
right, so Chris has just started doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, which is what I was mega into Jiu Jitsu and mixed martial arts prior to doing board games. But that's like a my business was I started off doing printing, and then I started promoting mixed martial arts, and then because I was doing all my own design and print for mixed martial arts, other promoters asked me to do the design and print for their promotions and their gyms and stuff. So I ended up basically doing lots of mixed martial arts related printing, and then the the printing became more worthwhile than the actual promoting. So I just set up another print company, which eventually I tried to get out of by doing board games, publishing board games, and writing board games. But then obviously because I've been doing my own prototyping and some small scale manufacturing, I've just ended up printing again. I can't escape printing. um, but yeah, during our time promoting, we used to hire out hotels where all the guys were going down, and the mixed martial arts community. I mean, despite it being people fighting in cages, it's still very very geeky and very very nerdy. Like the people that were right into it and the people that were really into jiu-jitsu were generally quite a geeky crowd, and they at the hotels afterwards, everybody used to come back to the bar, and generally we'd take over an entire hotel just because the amount of people and staff and things that were coming down for a good, basically just the same as going down when we're doing the conventions now. But rather than there being people sat around, you know, playing board games at the tables, we used to just pull all the furniture back and then do jiu-jitsu in the hotel in the evening. And so people would be just stood at the side having a drink, and other people would be rolling around on the floor, and the hotel staff just didn't have the first idea what was
And
going on.
they'd be doing jiu-jitsu even though they'd have a few bevies.
Yeah, it was the bevies were compulsory for the hotel jiu-jitsu. But yeah, it was really
Wow.
good fun. But it does, like, thinking about it, it's like I always think with, especially with the internet and the way that it's very easy with the internet for people to find like-minded people, regardless of what that kind of thing is, and it's always kind of brought people together in their little groups. But regardless of what little group it is that you are chatting to, or even just following a forum of, or whatever, you see the same behaviors and the same people types within those things. So it's like I'm still involved in a few of the sort of like mixed martial arts groups and things, and the way that people speak on there, and the way and the sort of like forum characters and all that kind of thing. It's the same across all different things. So it's like just sort of humans humaning, I suppose.
Well, it's just a shared passion, and I think what's important here is that people aren't looking for some grand unified answer. I've been listening to a lot of C.T. Nguyen, and so C.T. Nguyen is a philosopher who's recently come out with a book about games and how gamification is really problematic, because one key thing about games is that you can stop them and that we choose to start playing them. But when we start gamifying them, things like everything in real life becomes, okay, let's boil it down to this number, then it can make people chase after things. And the notion of simplicity, that we want clarity of rules, that is the same kind of notion that can get cults and problematic theories started, when people are just looking for a simple solution, when, let's be honest, there is no simple solution. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, that games should be separated from the complexity of life, and it's good to have that simplicity, but we need to have that reminder that real life doesn't have to have that level of simple answers.
Do you think social media plays a role in that? Because
absolutely.
Social media kind of gamifies everything, doesn't it?
Because absolutely, and this is one of the things that Nguyen actually calls out, where the number of likes, the number of shares, whatever, and I get a little, oh, look at me, and I try to really focus less on the number of likes that I get, even though sometimes if I am looking at that, I'll actually click to see who liked it. Okay, that's nice. Let's actually remind myself who this person is. Because it's not about the numbers. That is not the thing. It's about that human connection, and it's about having those conversations. That is the important thing.
Yeah, it's hard not to slip into that. Oh, that thing that I just said was very popular. Kind of that kind of mindset for stuff. But yeah.
And I understand, especially if you've got something to promote, and let's be honest, so many of us do, then we do end up potentially maybe thinking, okay, this is the picture I'm going to put on Twitter, or this is the picture I'm going to put on Instagram, and I'm going to cater it towards that thing. And that's not great. But I think this is a trap that we fall into when we're seeking to self-promote or promote ourselves. And let's be honest, in this day and age, everyone is kind of a promoter, yourself included. I mean, you want to come here to talk about Butler Publishing. I'm having you on here because
this is the first sort of this is the first thing that I've really done other than interviews at shows. My social media presence is terrible. It's generally just other people. It's other people just tagging me into things.
You don't have a Twitter?
I have. There's a Z1 Twitter, but I do need.
Yes.
I do need to have a personal one.
I was trying to work out how to tag you on Twitter, and I couldn't work it out. But I'm sure I'm following you, but I completely forgot.
Yeah, I did all sorts with it. When the first game that I did was Z1, and I ended up that Facebook page ended up getting a lot of people following it. There's like 5,000 on there or something. But and I tried to change it from that to just a general dice sports one. But then I was like, oh, that's going to be confusing. Like when I come start doing this, and especially when we're doing the promoting and the prototyping and the manufacturing and things like that. So I switched it back again. So then, but I just don't. I need to schedule a media day or something, or 2 or 3 meetings. And then or
maybe you could hire someone to kind of post for you.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, quick good morning to Alex, and Jeroen says you're doing okay, and I think the key thing is that you are actually just getting the stuff made, which is the key part. And Jeroen has another question: breakfast or brunch?
Neither.
Do you just start on lunch?
I generally don't eat until around about 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock? Wow. What was the last thing you ate?
was the last thing I ate? It was Dime Bar cake.
What, like a late night snack?
It was the IKEA the IKEA Dime Bar cake. That was like, because we'd spent all weekend running around just buying furniture, so we had IKEA meatballs for tea, and then brought Dime Bar cake, so we got stuff to have the following day. So yeah, not my sorry, carry on.
So that was your Wednesday night treats of sugar.
Yeah, I had a Dime Bar cake for my tea. Because I've not got my kitchen all set up or anything like that. So, and I've not got the cleaning stuff. And my partner, she normally complains at me for the amount of mess that I make when I'm cooking. So I do generally cook a lot, but I am quite a messy cook. And we've got granite worktops, and she's like, you've got to use this specific spray. You can't use this stuff because this will damage the tops. And so I'm basically banned from the kitchen until I've got all the appropriate equipment. So until then, I'll be eating cakes for tea.
Okay. My next question is, what are 3 of your favorite things that are not board games? What are 3 of your favorite things to do? Actually, let's include board games, because you said you hardly ever play board games. So what are 3 of your favorite things to do?
I like food. I do spend a lot of time cooking and eating out and things like that. So life generally revolves around food. I like to I go to the gym quite a lot, and I like to be outside. So I like to try and counteract all the sort of sitting at my desk eating with plenty of exercise and outside time. I think I came to the conclusion a couple of years ago now that my mental health was very much linked to how much exercise I was getting in and how much time outdoors I was getting, and it made a really, really big difference. Just kind of making that a definite thing. Like my routine is I do this every day, day in, day out, because other things start to suffer. So that's and I would advise anybody else.
Yeah, I definitely find that I
too.
smile more when I take a walk outside, and
just being outside and getting a bit of sun. I'm very seasonal, so when it's I absolutely despise winter. I've been meaning to go away every sort of like February just to kind of get a bit of sunshine.
I mean, part of the reason that I'm emigrating is just because I'm sick of the British weather. I'm not going to lie.
I saw that on your thing, and I saw the post where you said you were emigrating, and I looked, and then I noticed that you said like August, September, and I was like, oh no, Bez has been sending loads and loads and loads of work. And are you still gonna be doing a game every month when you're in Thailand? Is there a board game scene in Thailand? What's the
That's a conversation for another time. I had told people that I was emigrating like several years ago, but and this is August, September 2023, just in case you missed the year. But
I did see that afterwards, and I felt a little bit better about it when I noticed that it wasn't for like 18 months. So I'm like, okay, Bess can't go. She's our best customer.
I mean, yeah, there are board game cafes in Bangkok. It is a place. Board games are a thing for privileged people, but there are some privileged people in Bangkok, and I think I'll be able to set up a thing with having people over. Josie says, I refuse to believe Bez is leaving us.
Yeah, I think you might change your mind.
I'm sorry. Look, if you want to see me off, I will plan a big party around that time, August, September. It's what we've decided, and that's like, everyone will be invited, even if you don't know me personally. I'll, like, as long as I know that, like, even if we know each other, like, through the internet, like, and we've only talked, like, once or something, or, yeah, maybe you just like my games and they're like, oh, I really like seeing Bez at conventions, and this will be the last one, so it'll be nice to see everyone. I'm hoping to rent out a big hostel like Bastion does and see how, in that season, it won't be off-peak, so it will be a bit more expensive, but I just think it's a time when people will hopefully have some time off. I don't know. And someone suggested just latching onto an existing convention, but I feel like, if I'm emigrating for like a good few years, then
And BezCon has a good ring to it, doesn't it, as well? Yeah, and that's the time. I think if you are ever going to change your mind and decide to stay with us, I think that'd probably be it. If you run a convention and everybody goes down there and it's just a massive love fest for you, but I can't leave these people.
I mean, we have to celebrate. We have to separate at some point. Ewan, I will be coming to Essen this year. I won't have my own stand, but I do plan to be there if it's safe to go. I plan to go next year, but I will not be going after that. I'll be coming back to Europe for UK Games Expo. That's my plan, because that's my best convention.
I think I'm gonna attend Essen this year, but I'm not gonna, because that's one of the other things as well. Because like every convention we've gone down, I've always been working at, and it would be nice to go down and just. I've never been to a con and just kind of hung out, which would be a totally different thing. And Essen, I feel like
a holiday.
Yeah,
I think you should take like a 3-day, 4-day holiday. Come to KCON or Bastion. Go to something where it's just a bunch of people chilling out and playing games, and you don't really need to do anything.
The closest we managed was we did do one day at Aircon. I came down because I swung by to see you, but you were very much engaged in what you were doing, which is generally the case at all the cons.
I did see you, which was good, and fleetingly, and also afterwards, who was it? Rob? No, Steve Randall. Said, "Oh, I know Rob. I met them."
Yeah,
because Rob's actually working on their own thing. But yeah, you know what? Like, I want this to be a fairly short show, so just for anyone watching, I would love to have you back on again, Rob. But I want to push on, and let's call that end of the Questionably quick questions. Although there's so much more we could ask, and I encourage everyone to comment, ask a question from follow all that stuff. But what I really want to ask you is how you got into gaming. What's the first game you remember playing? Why did you decide to go down the publisher route?
I think mine's probably the same as quite a few people. It was Hero Quest with my dad, and like growing up, my dad ran the print business, and so he was generally home quite late. So my fondest memories growing up were generally like Christmas time playing Hero Quest and Space Crusade and things like that with my dad. And my favorite ever messages are the ones that come from guys that have bought my games, and then they basically messaged me saying that they were playing it with their kids, and they'd had like a fantastic time doing this and that. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's totally why I started doing this. But yeah, there's just Hero Quest. But that's most of my gaming was just like early Games Workshop stuff, and then I started doing homebrew games from being around.
Like that Space Marines, Warhammer, old school fantasy.
Yeah, like all the Space Marines, and we used to play Blood Bowl, Space Hulk, all those. But yeah, the Games Workshop stuff we absolutely loved. But that was then there was a fairly gigantic. I made a Star Wars. It was basically 40K, but done with like Star Wars micro machines, which you might have seen me posting stuff on the because I tend to post it every year on May the 4th. But that was I spent between the ages of about 17 and 32 just making this game because I was using all kind of placeholder parts and searching all over. And when the internet came around, you could buy things from everywhere. It became really useful. But I spent about 10 grand just building this like absolutely massive war game that we used to play it probably like 5 times a year or something. But it was amazing, and I've still, perhaps optimistically, still got everything in a storage container ready for the point at which I might be able to get it out again and play again. But yeah, I'd pretty much just done homebrew stuff. After playing Games Workshop stuff into my teens, then I just designed and played stuff that I'd designed with my friends, and I didn't really have any exposure whatsoever to the industry as a whole. So the first time that I came down to, I did UK Games Expo in 2015, I think. It was when it was still in the hotel. It wasn't in the Hilton. It was in the place that it was in before the Hilton. The one that was like more central Birmingham. I can't remember which one it was, but we went down and we did that and just kind of
Carlton Suites, I think.
Yeah, that one. So turning up there and seeing all the stuff that seeing what the industry had become between my sort of Games Workshop days and then getting into it was really, really interesting. And loads of people come over and go like, "Oh, you're doing a zombie game? Have you seen Zombie Side?" No, never heard of that. You should put this on Kickstarter. What's Kickstarter? It was very much just like I wasn't involved in any of the Facebook groups or anything like that. I knew nothing. I just turned up with a game that I'd made, and that's cool because I speak to people like that now that are just like have got no knowledge of anything whatsoever, and they've just made a game at home, and then they started poking around online trying to find somebody that can actually point them in a direction or potentially make it or whatever. So that's always good when you meet new people that are just completely new to it all.
And your first game that I'm aware of, like, you know, it's a fusion of miniatures and like comic books where you've got basically the cutscene as you go through a few pages of a comic, and then you've got another mission, and then you go through. And I remember seeing this at UK Games Expo before I knew who the heck you were. And like it's just wow, mixing together comics and games. I'm not super into the skirmish like Hero Quest type thing myself, which is maybe why I didn't like say, yeah, this is for me, I'm going to pursue this. But like I do love that idea of having the fusion of the comics, and then your second game, it's all about the flicking the planes around, and you've got to make sure that they get past a certain distance out of the hex. Like the hexes aren't for movement, just to make sure you flick them far enough so they're kind of swooping around and then dogfighting each other, which is a really cool idea. And yeah, what brings you to, why do you make games? What do you want to get out of it? And do you think you will keep making games?
I'll always make games. That's just, I think, like I've got I did have a 5-year plan kind of thing where I was planning on just I'm just going to do this, then I'm going to kind of cut back on what I'm doing to dedicate more time to spending with the children. But I think I'll always be writing because it's kind of just, it's where my head goes when if I'm driving somewhere, I'll just start writing a game in my head. You can't really get away from it. And I've always used it as a, like, if ever anything like terrible had happened or like we'd been going through a hard time, it's always been like a little bit of a mental bolt hole as well, just sort of off designing a game. So I put my head in that place. But I've got, because of all the problems that we had with COVID and with the all the shipping delays and the problems that we'd had with actually getting the fulfillment sorted out on the previous Kickstarters, I've ended up writing absolutely loads of stuff that I didn't really talk about until we'd fulfilled all the rest of the Kickstarters because people would be mad at me. So, but I've got about 20 open projects at the moment.
And I'd like to come to your manufacturing of stuff. I hear that your dad's very strongly involved in the printing process. Can you explain how this company came to be? You already mentioned that it started off with doing promotional material and printing for mixed martial arts, and then you decided to do.
It's accidental. It's always accidental with the printing, specifically with the game manufacturing. What happened was we were booked in to do UK Games Expo 2016, I think it was, something like that. And we'd bought a really, really big stand, and we'd got all the walling around it and the tables and the banners, and everything was ready to go because we were expecting to take delivery and be able to actually sell stock at Expo. But it turned out that we were not going to, and it was going to be, there was like a 2-month delay from Wingo. So I basically had to figure out how to make games so that I could make some stock for myself so that we could go down and actually sell it at Expo. And that's the first kind of formal manufacturing I did was basically I just ran 100 copies of Z-War that we sold at UK Games Expo. And it was far more complicated. In terms of printing stuff, like board games are like the most complicated thing that you could print, just in terms of the amount of different materials and the different stuff. And it's like, even now, I've got.
I mean, like, electronics have a lot going on.
Yeah, I'm on about printed material. In terms of printing stuff, board games are probably like the most complicated thing you could print, just because of the sheer amount of different components.
In terms of ink on stuff, okay.
Yeah, and just like, stuff like, just creating punch boards. There's probably 2 or 3 different ways that you can do it, and then the materials that you put down on top of it, and then the actual cutting process for punch boards is like it's quite a specialist cutting. It's like it's pneumatic die cutting. There's only probably 3 companies in the country that will actually do that kind of stuff. And then there's a lot of stuff with adhesives, and adhesives are really super temperamental. So you're trying to figure out how to stop things from bowing. So there's just absolutely crazy amount of just trial and error, trying to get things to the point that we're at now, where we can competently produce games in small quantities.
I would love to have you back on at some points in the future, if we could, to kind of properly explore the printing and manufacturing a bit more, to explore what comes from you, what comes from other people, and why we need the turnaround times that we have, why I can't just, send it to you yesterday to get it next week. But I just want to ask one generic question. What do you see for the future of yourself and UK printing? Do you think there will be more people who do this? Do you think you will continue to find more people? Yeah.
It's where we sit in the market's quite niche, just in terms of, I don't think that we're ever really going to be able to compete for certain types of product with China, for example, on the basis that is a lot of the things involved in game manufacturing are quite labor intensive. So obviously anything that's labor intensive, wage rate is the thing that's going to basically drive the rate that you can do it at. And unless people are prepared to pay significantly more for bigger projects, to the point that I wouldn't expect anybody to do it. Like for those kind of projects, even like my own stuff, like for example Z-War, we don't do the card stock for Z-War, even though we can do card stock like in bulk, because it just doesn't make sense to do it. But certain things like card games, we've got pretty good at the just lift off lid boxes if they're on the small ones. But it's almost like there's a tick list for pretty much every project that anybody's going to put through, and some if there's enough ticks, it's viable for us to be able to do it. And I think moving forwards, we're going to perhaps look at. I think 3D printing is interesting. That's something that's going to be coming from a print background. When we watched, I remember the very first. Like color copier, color laser type machines, and you'd put something under there, or you'd send something down to it, and it'd take like a minute for one sheet to come out. That was when I was in my late teens, and up to two years later, it was perfectly fine to run like 100 leaflets on it. And then you come forward up to now, and pretty much anything less than 5,000 will run on digital presses. And I think we will see something very similar with digital printing, to the point that they will have digital print production machines. So anything that's like small plastic parts or whatever, it'll be viable to do. Plastics in smaller quantities, which would be great for us if that's something that we could get on board with. It's timing it right, really, with the
and it's these sorts of technological advances that make something like Keyforge viable.
Absolutely, yeah. So it changes all the time. It's so like the first game we did was it's hand sculpted, but by the time we were actually producing it, then it was like everybody had already moved to renders. So it's just like it just changes all the time. And like the color stuff, have you seen the color 3D printing?
I have not.
Yeah, so they can just 3D print things in full color as well. Which, if that technology gets to that point, that's something that's obviously going to be big for games.
Now, the final question I want to ask you before we wrap up, as I do a wee bit of stretching, because it's always good to stand up and get out of your chair and have a wee stretch, is from Mejam Frog, who joined a wee bit late, but said, do you prefer playing, designing, or manufacturing games, or something else?
Designing.
Designing is your favorite.
Designing 100%. Yeah. So just sitting and designing. I like playing stuff. I never play anything that's finished. So you're always just kind of playing things up to the point that it works, and then it's like, yeah, other people can play that now. I'm going to go play something that doesn't work yet. But yeah, that was the the actual printing side of things was only ever meant as, because I like the Kickstarter model and I really, really wanted to be a game designer and I wanted to do this full time. And the thing that made that dangerous was obviously if you were having to hit a minimum order quantity of 1,500 units or whatever for your game, and then you were going to Kickstarter with something that you got to set a funding goal at a certain point, there was always that danger that you would not hit funding and it wouldn't be viable to do it.
And nowadays, even if you are going to print 1,500 after Brexit and COVID, it's really difficult to get, the time of day if you want to have like a nice 2-piece box. Whereas I think that for me, the busy bargain bag model, where it's like, 50 copies, if I sell through that, that's fine. And then since then I've decided that 100 copies is basically still few enough that with the number of conventions I go to, I would be shocked if I wasn't able to sell through or something. And frankly, it's not that expensive a mistake. Like if one of my games, doesn't sell out and it's like, oh, I only sold 30 copies of it. Well, I've only wasted £200, but that's not even wasted because that's really valuable data. That's kind of knowing, okay, there was a serious problem with this game, whether it was in the graphics or the way I was demoing it or something fundamental with the game. And maybe the cards should have been single-sided rather than double-sided, like double is, you know what I mean? Anyway, like some.
Yeah. But that's the whole thing really with the game manufacturing for me was down to I wanted some kind of safety blanket. I wanted to basically go and do the Kickstarter thing and make a living on Kickstarter, but I wanted to be in a position that meant that if I put something onto Kickstarter and it only did 200 units, I could still do it, fulfill that project, and then just move on to the next thing. And I do say to people, we can give you. If your game may go to Kickstarter and it may do really, really well, and you may end up doing 5,000 units, and that's definitely something that you're going to do through China or whatever. But if you want a little safety blanket of, you can go on there with a relatively low funding goal because you know that you can sort of viably produce 200 units or something. Then it kind of keeps the spirit of Kickstarter alive, because a lot of especially like first-time designers now. It's a hard market to break, and it's becoming obviously increasingly more and more professional in terms of the general presentation that people put forward for things, and I think it's just nice because there are still a lot of people that kind of sit in that hobby area of game design, and for them to basically be able to still go and do something and it's still fun and them still kind of do the thing that they've been really being able to actually perpetuate that is really nice. And so,
like not every game has to be selling 1,000 units for it to be a success. Frankly, for you, maybe success looks like printing 10 copies and then you give those copies to your friends and family, and there's some lots of in-jokes, because that's what you could do. Like you couldn't do that in a big print run, but if you've got something that's okay, this is just going to go to my closest friends, or maybe it's as a wedding favor. Imagine that if you were having a wedding and then Dave Turksey and why he did it.
Board game wedding favors. That's actually a really good idea, Baz.
But anyway, the point is, it's been there's lots that we could talk about. I would like to wrap it up for sure at this point.
Okay.
Thank you for being part of this discussion.
No problem.
I would like to I'd like to finish off with you asking me a question. Question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. What would you like to ask me, Rob? I
suppose you how you got into the board gaming, because I've told you how I got in, but I've not.
Okay.
Because obviously you do absolutely loads.
So this is something that I've talked about before, but I will hit the highlights for anyone who's new and anyone who's in the discussion watching this live, or if you're watching this after the fact, feel free to answer yourself. How did you get into board gaming? Personally, I definitely remember Monopoly, Risk. These were games that, look, it wasn't so much about what the game was. Like, if it was Carcassonne, maybe we would have enjoyed it more. I don't know. But what I really liked is that the rules were there. They were clear. You know, for Monopoly, I could pick up the rule book and read it through and say, okay, this is what we've got to do. And yeah, sure, it doesn't explain exactly how the auctions operate. And that's quite weird to have like auctions be such a big part of it, but it doesn't explain how you do the auctions. So that bit can be legitimately house rules. It just says do this and then it goes to auction.
Right,
But the way it's typically done, or at least it was meant to be done as I understand it, is just there's the auctioneer, but the auctioneer is themselves involved in the auction. And like that's the only game that permits that. I think that was in Building Blocks of Tabletop Game Design. Jeff Engelstein and Isaac Shalev said the English auction, this is the only game that does what we call the English auction that
Right.
you can do this in. But anyway, the point is having family around a table, and then as a child I might have played 3D Noughts and Crosses. Well, I played Noughts and Crosses first, and then 3D Noughts and Crosses where we played it on bits of paper, just saying, okay, imagine that's above that, and trying to, you know, play while we were meant to maybe doing maths or whatever. And I just found it fascinating. Originally, video games, this world, like by changing one number, you could change everything, or by going through this screen that's scrolling to the right, what's beyond the screen, it could be literally anything. I mean, there's limits, obviously, but you know what I mean? Like, there's so much that it could be, and that's super exciting. And I think I come to board games with the same sense of wonder that, yeah, I love board games, what they are, but even more to some extent, I love what they could be and what I think that they're turning into, where they're expanding. And it's not just games about strategic thoughts, it's also games about empathy, games about there are games that are themed around anti-colonialism or bereavement or anti-war, which is absolutely fantastic. But there are also more, like, Say Anything for me was a real revolutionary thing in my mind to say, wow, a game can be like this. I already knew there could be abstract games. And that for me was far more eye-opening than Lost Cities or Puerto Rico, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you seem to really embrace the kind of broad spectrum of what a game can be. But obviously the noise making game. In fact, I sent you all the copies of the Wii Whimsical, and I need to buy one back off you, because that is one that I could probably play with the kids now, and I think they'd really enjoy that one. But like stuff like that, it's so you can just go anywhere with these type of games, can't you? And I think that's the thing that I really like about your stuff is that you do embrace, like, sort of involving sort of physicality to it, or doing the names, or it's a really fun kind of open-ended approach to it, and I really like that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I absolutely feel like this sort of experimentation is really important. And the truth is that when you have to print a certain amount, then that kind of experimentation can be really difficult. And even doing something in boxes, it is a bit of a risk. But
I think I struggle with that kind of everything has to be like some sort of maths puzzle element of game design. So when I start designing games, it's always I've always got the kind of maths of it in my head. And I think the only thing that we've ever done really different was like with Airflix, like I said, when we started incorporating the sort of dexterity elements and things like that. But seeing your stuff really did kind of like, particularly the first one of yours that obviously one of the first ones we did was Wee Whimsical Creatures. And I was like, that's a really
a game about Wee Whimsical Creatures and trying to identify them after some makes noises, you mean?
That's the one, yeah. I should have written that down and read it off the bottom.
I am half thinking of making a new busy bargain bag, a game about cute comical creatures and trying to identify them after some makes noises. But
Yeah.
that's a story for another day. Josie says that she got into games through Cheat, Rummy, Mousetrap, Cluedo, Scrabble, and Connect 4, which I can totally see that. I'd like to ask everyone at this point over to you, what are you up to? You can share button if you want to. What are you up to? I have about 28, 9. I've got 9 more creatures to do the colouring in for, and then the 16 radishes, and then the front cover, and then I've done all the art for the boxes that needs to be done today, I think. So I should be able to do that.
Is this to get it to me in time?
Yeah, and also
right, okay.
Chris only works Wednesday and Thursday, so if you don't get it today, then yeah. But it's also because if it's not this week, it will be there next week, which is too late for you.
I feel bad now. She's been telling me that you were getting up at 2:30 in the morning to do some colouring. I'm just like, that's me. You have to do that.
No, I should have been more. I should have done stuff like more ahead of time. That's my fault. Don't blame yourself. You gave me a deadline, and like I knew the deadline weeks ago. It's just that I've been a bit barmy and trying to do a game every convention, and like there just happens to be like 3 conventions in close succession.
It's definitely a busy one, but yeah, I'm
Anyway.
going to go back around and crack back on with cat counting. I can't remember the full name again. I'm sorry.
A game about counting cats, shapes, and colours that keeps getting trickier.
Keeps getting trickier. That's it. I remember.
Yeah, because each time you count successfully and you're the first one to count, you get another card to count. And what I'm really proud of is that adults and small children could play together. As long as you can count up to 3, 5. You might need to count up to 15. If you can count up to 15, you're old enough. If you can't count up to 15, you might need to...
I've gone way higher than 15 before.
I mean, given that you're printing hundreds of things, I should hope so.
Yeah. No, but I think the kids will be able to do that one. I need to when we do those Bezzy bags, I need to have one off you every time we send them through, because that is the sort of stuff that would be really useful for getting the kids in.
Absolutely.
I think that
recap and wrap up before we finish up. So to recap and wrap up, we've had a lovely chat. We've talked about the enjoyment of bits of wood, cardboards that are being stacked in a trapezoid style fashion and just layering things on top of each other. What can be done? We talked about mixed martial arts. We talked about, having joy in your youth with Hero Quest and other games and Games Workshop stuff.
Hold on, I can show you that, because I've got. Sorry to interrupt, but that I was trying to describe the decoupage thing. It's actually the box that my laptop stood on has got them in it.
Okay,
so that's what I was. You see that?
Oh yeah.
So it's like
multi-layer. Wait, let me make you bigger. There we go.
Yeah, so it's like multi-layer. I think these are 4 layers actually. But I did them just as a placeholder until we got some minis for it. But I thought they're quite nice. That is
very fancy.
You could probably use that. So I don't know. You have to just do it with punch board with adhesive backs, and probably the customers would like stick the multiple layers together. But it's definitely got my head ticking on
possibilities.
Yeah, definitely.
Components first design is a really fine way to do things. We talked about just getting into game design, getting into enjoying drunken fights in hotel bars, consensual fights.
Drunken consensual fights, yeah.
And then we talked about family and the importance of family, talked briefly about voting and being in a country that isn't ravaged by war. But we, celebrated the joy of board games and the ability to manufacture a small quantity that allows you to really do a little bit of what the spirit of Kickstarter, I think we both believe, should be, although should is a strong word. If you want to check me out, I am Stuff by Bez everywhere, Twitter, Instagram, blah, blah. Check out stuffbybez.com/streams for the future episodes if you want an idea of what's coming up. Tomorrow is going to be a quick thing. Saturday and Sunday is also quick. Monday is also a solo thing. I don't know if you've got an idea for a topic, let me know. Otherwise, I might talk about the latest game that I'm working on. On Monday, I'll be talking about art with Naomi Robinson. On Tuesday, hopefully have Chloe Masheter, and on next Wednesday have Jess Medringham, and then on Thursday next week, I am going to Herefordshire board gaming event where as always, I've got a special promo card from Rob and going to be giving that away, and also a brand new game, which is the game about counting cats, shapes, and colours. And that keeps getting trickier. I'm just laughing. I know my titles are absurd.
Are you going to do a set
of all the Bezzy bags?
Set of all the Bezzy bags, yeah.
No, people. So what I've decided is I'm going to start doing first edition ones are a £5, and then if I do a second edition that's got a fundamental change, it's going to be a £5 because it's like, that was, not great. I'm still refining it, but if it's exactly the same game just with different graphics, and the graphics don't really matter, like complements, a game about drawing creatures, complementing the creatures, then complementing the drawings, then complementing the complements, I'm going to Chris has totally redone the graphics. When I said I'm going to, that's like taking responsibility for something I did not have any part in. I'm sorry, Chris. No, Chris isn't listening to me. But Chris totally redid it all. It does look much better, but it's going to be exactly the same text with like maybe one card changed.
Right.
And that then second editions will be £7.50. But then if it's going to be like, if it does well enough, then I'll put together a few. And because you're able to print 1,000 boxes, but they don't all need to be the same box, I only need to have like 5 games, which is hardly anything. I mean, for me. And then I just print like 200 of each. Boom, done.
Games. No trouble at all. Just knocking another 5 games out. Be fine. Yeah,
I'll have another 5 games by the end of the year.
There's 24 hours in a day, isn't
there? There are, absolutely. So yeah, I might be a little bit manic and delirious, but lots of love. I didn't, Rob. Where do you like to be found? I got that link. Is there anywhere else that you would like to be found?
No, that's about it at the moment. Again, it's up there with social media in terms of things that I need to do.
Yes, you do. So zwargame.com or zwargame.com, depending on whether you're American or British.
I've started saying Z now. I think there's so many other people say Z that I've started saying Z, and my kids all say Z as well because they're on. It's creeping in. What my kids my kids say diapers and trash cans and things like that because they're all. All the YouTube channels that they watch are all American ones, but yeah.
Well, for now, I do have to skedaddle. Lots of love. Please share, spread the word. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who popped in. Thank you, Josie, Timmy, Medjam Frog, Yoon, Aquisulis, and anyone else who's watching and just lurking. And most importantly, thank you, Rob. This is me trying to point. I should have just used my other hand.
It needs to go the other way. Thanks. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'd happily come on and do it again when you've got a bit more time. So yeah, good.
So for now, all that's left to say is bye. This is a goodbye song to do. Bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye. This is the end of the show. Bye. And now it's time to go to do bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye. This is the end of the show. Bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, everyone. Bye, Rob.
See ya.